Good afternoon, everyone. I am Erin Pollard, and I am the Project Officer for ERIC in the U.S. Department of Education. Today we are going to discuss the ERIC Thesaurus. We are going to discuss how it is used in indexing ERIC records, how it is maintained and updated, and how you can find relevant resources in ERIC by using the Thesaurus. Before we begin, however, I want to go over some housekeeping items. First, we will be muting everyone so we do not get feedback from your phones. That does not mean that we don't want your participation. At the end of the webinar, we will take as many questions as we can, and we look forward to having a lively discussion. If you think of a question during the webinar, please feel free to type it into the chat box. We also know that there are often ERIC questions outside the scope of the topic of this webinar. We will be happy to answer them as well at the very end. A few weeks after this presentation is complete, we will post it as a video on our YouTube page, and then we will post the slides on the ERIC multimedia page. We will send everyone who registered an email letting them know that the slides and video are now available. Today, 3 of us will be speaking to you. As I mentioned earlier, I am Erin Pollard, and I am the Project Officer for ERIC. I oversee the program from the government's perspective and set policies for the program. I'm going to provide some framing of why ERIC has a thesaurus and why it matters. Then Lydia Helrick-Dawson and Judy Beck, who use the ERIC Thesaurus extensively in their daily work, will provide a deeper look. Today, the agenda is as follows. I'm going to talk about why we have a thesaurus and what it means for ERIC users. Then I'm going to turn the presentation over to Lydia to give some background and history and talk about the process used for maintaining and updating this thesaurus. Judy will then discuss the role of the thesaurus in resource discovery, including using it for indexing and as a tool for searching. We will then have a wrap-up and time for questions during the last 15 minutes of the webinar, but feel free to use the chat box if you have a question at any point during the webinar. So where to begin? Why are we having this webinar? And why does ERIC need a thesaurus? Since we are deeply involved in updating the ERIC Thesaurus this year, we thought it was a perfect time to give this webinar. We realized that the vast majority of people who search on the ERIC website don't directly use the thesaurus to help focus their searches. The ERIC search engine uses intuitive technologies and will bring back relevant records without having to directly use the thesaurus. However, even if you're not searching the thesaurus, it is used to help with the retrieval of relevant records. This is particularly important in a broad collection like ERIC that has content spanning more than 50 years. We also realize that even among researchers who do use the thesaurus, there's often little understanding of how the thesaurus is used in ERIC and the kind of work that goes into making records discoverable, despite wide variances in the vocabulary and index literature. We'd like to provide some background on the usefulness of the thesaurus, as well as to give you an overview of the work and care that goes into indexing records and maintaining it. In essence, the ERIC Thesaurus is a discovery tool. It helps structure the subject matter represented in the ERIC collection to help users find relevant records. ERIC made the decision 50 years ago to incorporate a thesaurus within its database of resources. The founders of ERIC recognized that without a thesaurus, it would soon become extremely difficult to find the information that you want in this rapidly growing collection of education-related reports and other resources. The thesaurus continues to perform this necessary function today. I'm now going to turn the presentation over to Lydia to talk about the background and history of the thesaurus, how we maintain it, in the 2015 update.
Thanks, Erin. In this first section, I will introduce you to the ERIC Thesaurus and provide a brief overview of its history. Then we will go over the different types of thesaurus terms and what information accompanies each term. The Thesaurus of ERIC Descriptors, or the ERIC Thesaurus for short, is a list of carefully researched and selected words and phrases that are used to describe and access ERIC documents by subject. The thesaurus represents the subjects covered by ERIC. From the thesaurus, we can tell what subjects are covered by the documents in the ERIC collection. The thesaurus organizes ERIC documents by subject. Each term in the thesaurus represents a subject covered by ERIC and, therefore, can be used through the process of indexing to organize the ERIC collection by subject. The thesaurus was designed for search. As we will discuss in a moment, the thesaurus was designed as a tool for information retrieval. It has always been used as a way to access ERIC documents by subject. The ERIC thesaurus is almost as old as ERIC itself. Preliminary work to establish a thesaurus of education terms for ERIC indexing was conducted in 1965, making it one of the earliest controlled vocabularies developed for an information retrieval system. The first version of the thesaurus was released in 1966. There were 14 print editions of the thesaurus released between 1966 and 2001. The ERIC thesaurus is recognized as an authoritative vocabulary tool in the field of education and, as such, has served as a reference for the construction and development of other thesauri, including the Australian Thesaurus of Education Descriptors and the British Education Thesaurus. In 2004, the thesaurus went fully digital and was made available to search and browse on the ERIC website. Since then, the thesaurus has been regularly updated with new versions and released directly to the ERIC website. Today, the thesaurus is accessible from the ERIC homepage. The thesaurus is also available for download by the general public, including other ERIC information providers, in the download section of the ERIC website. Later, we will talk about how we maintain the thesaurus and the upcoming thesaurus update. First, let's talk about the terms that make up the thesaurus. The thesaurus contains two main types of terms. First, we have descriptors. A descriptor is a word or phrase that represents a subject in the field of education. Descriptors are the terms used to index ERIC records, and they appear on every record in the ERIC collection. Only one descriptor, or sometimes two, are used to represent a single topic. This is done so that all records on a topic, regardless of the language used by the authors, will be gathered together under only one or two descriptors. Since we can only have one or two descriptors per subject, it is important to have additional terms in the thesaurus to serve as guides to those descriptors. Those guides are called synonyms. A synonym is a word or phrase that means the same thing, or nearly the same thing, as a descriptor. While they may not seem as important as descriptors since they are not used in indexing, synonyms are incredibly useful as we can have multiple synonyms to serve as guides to one descriptor. Synonyms can represent popular abbreviations, differences in spelling, and user-preferred terms. Each term in the thesaurus, whether it is a descriptor or synonym, has information associated with it that explains how the term is used in ERIC, clarifies its relationships to other concepts within the thesaurus, and provides some historical information. We call this a term entry. A descriptor term entry has a lot of useful information. In every term entry, you will see the term itself, in this case, adult education. Descriptors frequently have scope notes, which provide a description of how a concept is defined within the ERIC literature. It may also provide references to other terms within the thesaurus, differentiate it from similar terms in the thesaurus, or share historical information about its use in indexing. Each descriptor is assigned to a category. The categories group conceptually related thesaurus terms together as a tool to help users locate useful descriptors. We will talk more about using the categories later. Descriptors may be related to other terms in the thesaurus. It may have broader terms, indicating that the descriptor is an example of, or an instance of, a more comprehensive term. Broader terms are less precise than the descriptor. The descriptor may have narrower terms, indicating that the descriptor is a more comprehensive term than others in the thesaurus. Narrower terms are more precise than the descriptor. The descriptor may also have related terms. These are other terms in the thesaurus that may be associated with the subject represented by the descriptor and may be useful in selecting terms for indexing or searching. Under the heading, Use this term instead of, the descriptor's synonyms are listed. The date that the descriptor was added to ERIC is also provided. Please note that not all descriptors have all of the elements. A descriptor may not have a scope note, or any related terms or any synonyms. That is not a mistake. That just means that when the descriptor was added to the thesaurus, those elements were not deemed necessary or appropriate. A synonyms entry may not have as many elements as a descriptor entry, but you will always find the most critical element, the descriptor that is used instead of that synonym in indexing. In this case, the synonym college-community relationship directs you to use the descriptor school-community relationship.